Oh no,
There
Mike's.
we brought Thursday with us. Yes,
Well, this is what happens on Thursday nights. Okay.
This is what happens when we see a game like that. We'll just start off with a comment because I think it was the best way to put it is frustrating on that, given what we talked about before the game. We talked about energy. We talked about playing Arsenal playing into our hands. But Timuchin, it was the other way around from almost the kickoff, wasn't it? We just played right into what they wanted. We toyed around with the ball at the back, gave the ball away, conceded the goal, and then it was in Arsenal's hands for pretty much the rest of the game, bar the goal, wasn't it?
I don't know, man. I kind of take it as, another kind of a semi-flat start, just like needless set piece. And then, honestly, you give that set piece goal, and they did have a chance for it afterwards where Ali does great, I think, like Martinelli kicks it, basically doesn't hit the target because Ali is in front of him. But I don't know, man. I'm ready to be the one to be positive, but as much as I am bummed that we did not get the 3 points because I feel like, they were there to be had. I am really encouraged by a lot of stuff I saw today in the grand scheme of things, from Endo's play to Gomez's play. Like overall, how valuable and how great of a midfielder Jones has become. I don't know. I took a lot of positives out of it, minus the result, right? The result should have been 3 points, but I felt overall it was a good battle. This is more like the team that we're used to seeing.
I said on the Discord channel that we were playing around with the ball too much, and it nearly cost us. It did cost us once. It nearly cost us twice. It was almost like, and it felt like to me all day today. It's felt 4 hours earlier than it actually has been on the clock. So at 1:30, I thought it was like 11:30 in the morning. I don't know whether that's just because of the time of year it is. But it felt like a morning game start almost to me. I was almost going to say in the Discord channel, but then things were happening on the game that it felt like the players had their Christmas party last night and then came straight from the hotels to the game. We needed to have an impactful start for that game, but we didn't. And it's now something that has crossed over from the early morning games into a late evening game. Is there something maybe in our preparation or in our team talk before we go out? Do you think that maybe causes those flat starts? Or is it just maybe even a little bit of fear of not wanting to give too much away too early?
This one was weird, right? It could be half of it could be psychological, where you're like, let's not give a goal away because we always do, kind of thing. The game starts like 30 seconds into it. He whips that ball into the box, which could have been like really dangerous. So that I think everybody already gets kind of like a step back and a semi-fear. But yeah, the first 5 to 10 minutes was honestly, if you look at both teams throughout the game, it was pretty sloppy. But I think then the credit goes to the other team for doing the run around and pressing. In terms of playing around, like screwing around in the back, I don't know, man. At this point, it's like it is what it is. This is how pretty much every top team plays. You got to kind of pull them up. It's not good for the hearts. And the problem is, especially when both teams want possession, you almost have to do that because any long ball you send up, first of all, that's not how we play. Aside from Gakpo, who I thought did really well bringing some of those balls down, you really don't have a target up top to hit. If it's just you're just playing a long ball, you do when you pull them forward, then you can send it to wide to Diaz and Mo and stuff like that. But I think that's just part of our game at this point. You're going to have to take the goods with the bad. Look at Arsenal. They did the same thing. You can see Zinchenko is not comfortable doing that, even though he came from City. There are certain players that are still not comfortable doing that. And that's when the beginning of that second half, we kept winning ball after ball after ball. But I think it goes with the territory at this point, man. I know it's not old school, but it's kind of, that's how everybody plays.
But the thing about for me always is that if we're a counter-pressing team, the other team has to have the ball at some point for us to counter press in the first place. And the rule has always when I played was the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of each half, you pump it forward and you see what the other team's made of. But it wasn't just the ideology of passing around at the back. Is that they were quite slow passes as well, weren't they? Like for the first 5 minutes, there was no checking. There was no change of direction. It was just point and pass, point and pass, point, get back to Allison, point and pass. And there was almost no point to what they were, pun intended there, but there was no point to what they were doing. It was just, let's keep the ball for 5 minutes and see what Arsenal have. And Arsenal almost couldn't believe their luck that we weren't getting at them from the outset. And it was almost like a completely different game to the United game, because that was a fast start. We just couldn't get the ball in the net. And then after that 20 minutes, their game plan became more obvious. So in terms of how we approach these games, we do tend to get better as the game goes on. Is it possible that Jurgen Klopp can take them out of the back, like take them out in the back and then play 20 minutes of a game, just like 5-a-side or something like that, and then put them on the field? Because there is a problem with us starting games. And outside of the technical, tactical, I think you might have hit the nail on the head. They're so afraid of conceding the first goal that maybe they are playing too much within themselves. Should we just should somebody in the coaching staff just say to them, go concede the goal, but do it whilst we're attacking forward rather than playing around at the back?
See, I think the first 5 minutes, I mean, I kind of get that, where, yeah, the ball was moving really slow. But that's kind of like a looking at like what Arsenal's trying to do. I kind of took that as, because the head was always up looking forward to see like how they're shifting, what they're doing, where the spaces are going to be. So I definitely get that. But yes, and part of that is, I think your defensive midfielder, who was excellent today, by the way. And like maybe we do have somebody over there, but I think he's not as big on coming in between the two center backs. He's not the kind of defensive midfielder who's going to come in between the two center backs and build play. So you almost have to pass it around so you get somebody out wide, and so you can kind of stretch the field. I think that's part of the ordeal. You do need someone sometimes to drop back to kind of take the ball and move around fast. I think Curtis Jones was really the only one doing that. So I don't see it as much from Szoboszlai, to be honest.
I think we talked about this on Thursday with Endo, and we've done a pre-match as well. He is a traditional six, really, isn't he? He's not there to build the play. He's there to stop it and break it up, and he's getting a lot more comfortable with doing it within our system, I think. And I said before, he reminds me a lot of Lucas Leiva. He's not the most talented player on the ball, but he's becoming steady and reliable. But you are correct. We do need something a bit more from that number 6 position, which is probably why Endo will become a stopgap until we do find that proper ball playing number 6. But if we know that that's the case, should the coaching staff not come up with different patterns of play to take that into account?
I don't know. I mean, you look at it, I know we didn't come as much from the left. There's still a struggle there. And I know we've been harping on Diaz a lot. I thought he did excellent defensively today. He works a lot off the ball, and he did well defensively. We just don't get as much on that side attacking-wise. But I don't know, man. I find it hard to be critical of the play today. You played against Arsenal, and, at the end of the game, if we feel like, man, we missed, we should have gotten 3 points, I think that says you played well. I thought we played well overall. So I find it hard to kind of nitpick on a lot of the tactical stuff. We talked about it in the pre-match, kind of had to be clinical. There's a lot, that first 15 minutes in the second half, there are so many opportunities, not to mention, Trent's in the post and stuff, but there are so many opportunities to, when you have numbers and you're going at the goal and you can see Arsenal is on the back foot and they're backpedaling. We just did not capitalize. A goal comes there. I think this game becomes the 4-1 and stuff like that you predicted. It just did not come. It was just not as clinical. But aside from that, I find it really hard to, and like I say, I'm usually the Mr. Negative, right? I really took a lot of encouraging things out of this game, minus obviously Costas' injury, because now we don't have any depth at all because you have to use Gomez all the time.
Now, to be fair, to everybody and to us, we are putting on a podcast. We do have to talk about things, and sometimes you got to pick on some things. But overall, I think I agree wholeheartedly. I think there was more to be positive about than to be negative about. Pretty much the negativity is contained within that first 15 to 25 minutes of the first half. But for the rest of the game, yeah, I think we looked like we could have won it. With I hate to harken back to it from last week's game, but a little bit more luck in front of goal, or the bounce of the ball. But what I want to, Tsimikas' injury is it's a horrible thing to have to contemplate for him, and I hope it's not as serious as it looks, as it looked rather when he was coming off the pitch. But he has been making himself very, very valuable as a left back. But yeah, obviously Gomez is steady and reliable, but you would want a left-footed player out on that position. Unless you're Roy Hodgson, in which case a no-footed player is probably just as good for him.
I thought Gomez was great. That's great. Yeah, Hodgson is the right left foot thing.
Yeah, but what I want to say, just because it's underneath my name there, that handball call was one of the worst things I've ever seen VAR get wrong, and they've gotten a lot wrong, and I don't like VAR at all. But that was the definition of hand to ball, if ever there was a hand to ball definition. So we talked about, I said it at the start, but it's also possible that the VAR people had their Christmas party the night before as well, because I couldn't understand, with the benefit of replay and close-ups, that they couldn't have made the decision that the Arsenal player literally moved the ball with his hand out of the way.
I am not understanding when the slip is natural and when it is not. So when Curtis slips over the ball in the Tottenham game, that ends up being a red card, right? Oh, it's unfortunate he slipped. When the dude slips and pretty much catches the ball with his hand, somehow that's a natural position because he was falling. Okay, then isn't like your arm being out a natural position because you're running and nobody runs like with their hands on their side? So what is that? I mean, that was not, yes, it's natural when you're falling, but it's not natural that you're freaking falling. Then otherwise, why is it when somebody slides and the ball hits their arm, that's a penalty? But when this happens, oh, it's a natural position. He was gaining his balance. I know it's Dixon and he's an Arsenal guy, but what the hell was that? Not to mention the Saka thing in the second half. They were like, oh, he slipped. Okay, so did Curtis. Like, when is a slip considered normal? And when is a slip considered sucks to be you? Because it feels like when it's us or when it's Curtis Jones, sucks to be you, you should have slipped. When it's somebody else, they're like, oh, it's slip. When you slip, that's going to happen, kind of a deal. That was very cool. I'm just glad it did not come back to that, because I think it would be even a bigger talking point if this game ends like 1-0 or something like that.
Well, to me, I mean, the slip aside, like it looked on the replay that when I was looking at it, it was he literally moved his hand to push the ball out of the way, so it was not a factor in, if he.
I think he's almost like trying to like catch himself falling. You know what I mean? Like I understand it's natural that way, but don't fall, bro.
I think if you look at it back, there is a movement from his hand where he moves forwards towards the ball, which was not putting his hand down to break his fall. Now, having said that, slipping at Anfield is an increasing problem for me, and it has been since Brendan Rodgers was the manager. We praise the groundsmen and groundspeople, pardon me, for all of these nice-looking, well-designed, well-cut grass pitches across the Premier League. But why are the players slipping so much? And why is that not a factor in either what cleats they wear, or boots, if you're from where I'm from, or what kind of grass and turf they're using? Because it's becoming farcical for me at this point. Like when I call back home, when I talk to my dad, he was unfortunately a City fan, but still, that's a comment he says. Like, he's never seen so many players slipping on the ground, and he watched Manchester City in Manchester at the old on the Kit-Pack stand there, way back in the day when pitches were literally mud, and he still couldn't understand as many players slipping. So I know Brendan Rodgers called for several changes of turf while he was the manager here, and it sounded like petty kind of, let's blame the grass for the games we've lost. But it's still happening, and it's becoming frustrating to me. Is there something Is somebody doing something wrong there, or are we just really, really unlucky with the conditions at Anfield?
Compared to the back, yeah, going back to what you said about the mud thing, because I think, I mean, I grew up playing in like Turkey in Istanbul, and we would go to these schools that were like just freaking shit. So but when you're playing in a field like that, you kind of know you're playing in a field like that. So I think you're stepping accordingly because you know what the hell you're walking in, right? When you go out and it's like a carpet, I don't know, that's part of the ordeal where you don't really as much pay attention to, your settling as opposed to if you played in like a freaking like really watery. But then at the same time, we've heard Klopp complain about how dry the pitch was too. So I don't know what the middle is like. Not too wet, not too dry, somewhere in the middle. There was a lot. Like I remember in the second half a couple of times where they will play a long ball and it was falling short, and then Gomez would slip. But here's my thing: I don't want to jinx it now because it'll freaking happen next game. But why is it that only you see it from certain players? Is it because of how they are kind of like that? Because, man, I'm gonna jinx it. I don't even want to say it, so I'm not gonna name names. But I can think off the top of my head a couple of players I do not remember seeing them slip. Whereas there are certain players like, Elliott and Gomez and stuff like that who slip all the time. So is it like more on the player than you think?
I don't know, but I think Sparky Parky makes maybe the point here that some players wear moldies instead of studs. But the reason why they're not wearing studs, Sparky Parky, is because all of the studs are here today.
On that note, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so Z says the grass is dwarf perennial ryegrass. There's one for the trivia questions there on Monday nights around the future.
Dude. Wait a second.
Dwarf perennial ryegrass. The studs or molds on the boots are too small, which is what I had thought before. Because as with you, Timuchin, when I played way back in the day on the Irish potato bogs that we had for pitches, we had the screw-ins when you're back in the day. You could wear the screw-ins, and I deliberately always got the longest ones so I didn't slip, because I wasn't a great player, but what I didn't want to do was look like a clumsy player, so I always made sure I had the longest studs.
The least I can do is stand up.
The least I can do is stand up and not fall over. I do plenty of that now, but is it on the player to figure that out? Like I'm slipping a lot, so maybe I need to change the boots here.
And I think they give like an air of margin, right? Because there are times you see the player, they're like, okay, this shit is not working. Give me the other shoe. And they change it mid-game. I think like some of this is acceptable. But yeah, it is odd that you see. That's funny you mentioned that, because I thought the same thing when I saw Gomez like a slip a couple of times. I was like, what is going on out there? Like Elliott was slipping and stuff like that. And they were too. Arsenal was as well. It's not like just our players are slipping. Yeah, I don't know if they're like overwatering it. It is on the player, what the hell they're wearing. And I don't know, it's kind of like a comfort thing too, right? You're like, I'll take a little bit of slip but I feel comfortable in these shoes. Like I feel better playing like this kind of. It could be one of those things too. Yeah, the Sparky Parky, those were awesome, man. Like
Sparky Parky, bringing it back old school. I remember that as well. Now,
wait, that's a very British thing, by the way, to be spoiled by white. See, I'm amazed that you do not play like in Ireland, just like nothing but green fields. Because like I don't know, like when I was in England, it felt like every goddamn pitch, even like wasn't a lot, but at least maybe compared to the ones I had in Istanbul, they were pristine. I would consider them.
Yeah, you have to remember in Ireland is that like 20 teams would share the one pitch for training and playing, so there'd be like 10 games on it.
The morning game.
Yeah, you have to get the morning game. Yeah. But what I want to say though is that we've just spent 7 minutes ish talking about the quality of grass and the different type of cleats that the players wear.
I'm so impressed that Sir Z called out the type of grass.
Yes, I mean like that's one for BJ, who's back. Good to see him back again and their family. But that is a proper trivia question for down the road. But I think it speaks to what you said earlier on. In the bigger picture, we might be frustrated with the scoreline, we might be frustrated with parts of the performance, but we're 1 point off the top going into the new year-ish, more or less. We're satisfying Cozzy's superstition. He didn't want us to be top at Christmas. because the only time the team that has finished top at Christmas didn't win the league was when Liverpool was top at Christmas 3 out of 4 times, he said. So we get to keep that record out of the books. We got it, so we have a chance. But when we look back on it now, with all this little jollity and hilarity, it really was a top of the table clash. When we think a proper top of the table, these two were competing for the league clash, wasn't it?
I thought it was a great game. Like, I mean, obviously nervy as hell, a lot of like pacing back and forth, but I thought it was, it's very quality. It's probably, like, I know it's like TV talk, but it's the best of, best of Premier League kind of a thing. And it was. I thought it was like a good game, and it did not feel. It was hard fought, right? A lot of tough challenges, very physical, but it did not feel dirty. Maybe towards the last 15, 20 minutes. I don't know, like those are desperation challenges, or nobody wants to be the one beaten on the winning goal or something like that. But I thought overall it was a clean game, despite being really hard fought and physical and stuff like that. So I think that was the best. And like Serzi says, that's probably like the only. I'm not the only, aside from the score. The only negative to take is Costas being out now, because it looked like basically what happened to Robertson. So it could be our left back injury kind of thing. And I know Robertson is coming back sometime in January. I don't know if it's going to be after the break or whatever. While Gomez can fill in there, and I'm okay with that, it just eliminates any freaking like backups. I don't know, you put Bradley here and there or what, but.
Yeah, it certainly is something that takes the shine off how we've done so well this year. But we're going. What I was thinking was Salah kind of saves us again, not to make it too dramatic, but essentially pulls it out of the bag for us again. We're going to lose him for the AFCON. We're going to lose Endo for the Asian Cup games. We can't really afford injuries in that sense, can we? And we really need maybe whatever action plan we had for a proper ball playing number 6 to be done in January now. If it's Andre, maybe that would be a good one. But we really do need to see some sort of movement in the transfer window, possibly in January, don't we? To think about going forward on one hand, and then also to cover what we're going to be lacking right now.
I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if we jinxed it talking a lot about it, but we were talking earlier in the season about like the depth we have in midfield and, like the riches and stuff like that. And all this time for January, the entire conversation was, Mo is going to be gone. What are we going to do when Mo is gone and stuff? And we never said, hey, Endo's going to be gone and stuff like that. And I think that's, that has just as big of a concern right now. One thing that, I want to ask you that why we do not do this more, especially with Mo, because you could see Zinchenko like crapping his pants every time Mo was coming at him with the ball. Why do we not use that more? You see Arsenal get the ball to Saka to go at Gomez, right? You saw him give him to Martinelli to go at our like Trent or Konate and stuff like that. And mind you, on both cases, I thought Gomez did excellent. Maybe I think once or twice he got.
I think there was once where he was outran. That was essentially all it was, just a lack of pace.
And aside from that, I thought they did well, but I don't know why we did not give the opportunities for. I mean, you see it in the goal, right? And you feel the panic in Zinchenko anytime Mo has the ball coming at him. I don't know why we did not use and abuse that a lot more. We just kind of go back to that rotating and stuff and not isolating him as much. I know they don't let us, and I think this is where it hurts us not having a threat on the left. Maybe Nunez coming in earlier would have helped that cause, but when you don't have as big of a threat on the left-hand side to go at you, you can maybe slide a bit more towards Mo's side and not let him get those isolated passes.
I mean, I think part of it is that Klopp is not a tactically diverse manager in the game. We've talked about this since I've started as American Scouts or TV. The beginning and the end is, I think we like to call it, in the back room.
That's what we call it behind the scenes, yeah.
But he doesn't change to react to what the weak point of the game, the path of least resistance, so to speak, is in the game. Whereas, Mourinho, for example, just as a comparison, even though he's not a relevant coach these days, but he would do that. He would spot the other team's weakness and then just hammer it and hammer it and hammer it. And a lot of the time that weakness was at Chelsea, for example, that their right defender couldn't handle Drogba. So let's get the Drogba over there and then play the ball up to Drogba all the time. And then Lampard can pick up the scraps in behind. We don't do that. We're a very democratic team almost. We are like a socialist, Shankly socialist team. We spread the labor around. But sometimes I think you're right. That's not something we really want to do, is it? If there's a gap, we should be taking advantage of it as often as possible, because and this is the secret that like people forget. I think Pep Guardiola is one of the best coaches that has ever coached soccer as a game. But his success rate, certainly at Barcelona, was down to the fact that they would get the ball to Messi. Yeah. Everybody would drift to Messi, and Messi would get the ball to where the players were now free. But we can't do that because we're not hitting Salah all the time, which means the other teams can retain their balance, their defensive balance, and they can retain their compactness because they know the ball will also go to the left. It will also go in the middle. So I agree with you. I think it's something we should do more often. It would give us more variety in the attack. But we're not going to have that now for a little bit. So my question back to you is, how are we going to replace that? What are we going to do to cope without that?
I think you need to get, I mean, I don't know when Jota is back. I know he's already practicing, right? So he should be back soon. So hoping it's almost like Mo leaves, Jota comes back. But I don't know. I mean, Sergi says Diaz is injured. And I know he was hurting when he came out. I don't know if it was a matter of just hitting the legs. Elliott is an option on the right-hand side. I still feel like, judging by this midfield, and when the midfield is better, I feel like Szoboszlai on the right-hand side is a better option right now. And you can put... Well, now Endo's going to be gone too, but you can put Mac in there as well, and because he should be back in time, and you can maybe push Szoboszlai up top and put Elliott. I think I'd rather have Szoboszlai on the right hand side and Elliott where Szoboszlai plays than the other way around, just due to the speeds, the threats, and stuff like that, and being able to take people more 1v1. Whereas Elliott is a lot better in causing some chaos in the middle of the field where he can find some openings and pass the ball. Whereas Szoboszlai, I think, would be a lot more dangerous going at a player, kind of like how we use Mo, but not enough, as we just talked about.
Do you think, because I mentioned this is on Thursday, I think, I did, yeah, in the post-match about West Ham, a cheeky bid for Jared Bowen would be a Liverpool type move or a needed move, or is that just Macca's flight of fantasy there? Because he's a very good striker, and I think he's a better one than Darwin Núñez. And if we're going to lose Salah, even when he comes back, it adds another threat. Or is that just beyond? Is that just beyond the bounds of reality for that even to happen?
I mean, I would be all over it in terms of his style, right? I mean, in terms of his defensive rate and all that kind of stuff and the pressing and all that. The only issue is, A, would Bowen want that? B, would we spend that much for a backup right now? Because normally when Mo is there, Mo is going to play. So as much as I like the player and I like the scenario, I just don't know if it's in the books based on how much it would take to get somebody to be a backup overall. And especially, and would Bowen want that?
I mean, you wouldn't have to look at Moyes' face every morning when he comes into training. That's always a selling point. No, Jared, come to Liverpool. Really, it's fun. Jurgen Klopp is so funny on the training pitch, and it's not going to feel like one of the scenes from Lord of the Rings every time David Moyes opens his mouth.
Yeah, like I say, I'm all for the player. I just don't know if it's going to happen, but really depends on what happened with Diaz. We really do not have you had, if you said before, which I did not, the more I saw more of him, like if you said Bandok and stuff like that, you don't have that anymore either. Like, it's not like you have the option to bring a young player. So based on, I mean, obviously they know better Jota's situation and stuff like that than we do. But I feel like, yeah, that would be something to consider in the January transfer window, which we never even considered it before, just because of, we were like, oh, we look at the depth. I mean, I know this is going all around soccer, right? The injuries are way up because they're playing like 85 games in 10 days.
A week. 85 games a week.
Yeah.
That's what,
it's like we felt like midfield is so deep. Not anymore. We felt like the front line is so deep. not anymore. It's just, I mean, you don't have a right back anymore as a backup. You don't have a backup left back anymore. And I know we're not the only ones, so you don't want to be like, oh, the injuries are killing us. Everybody has some injuries. But that's what makes it, I think, even more impressive, because we do have a lot of injuries right now, and we are where we are. And I don't know, like if Arsenal or somebody like that. City has been hit with key injuries as well. But if Arsenal gets hit with a couple of injuries, like a Saka or one of their center backs and stuff like that, they could fall off. So being where we are right now, I feel like overall it's very encouraging. Despite it did hurt today, it did feel like we should have been the ones walking away with the 3 points.
So, is it possible that this will be the first league in history that was not won by the coach and not won by the goalkeeper and not won by the attackers, but won by the physio room?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? All joking aside, it is like, I think depth and how well your depth does is going to determine how things go. Are you going to have somebody that you did not think of in the beginning come in and kind of lift you? But not even like one person. It feels like you need 2-3 players that you considered squad players in the beginning to make an impact on your season. I mean, I guess you could say that with, you look back, even when we won the title, or the title runs, there's always a couple of guys that come off the bench and make key contributions, but it was off the bench contributions. Now you need them to do those being in the starting 11. That's a totally different ball game.
So final thoughts then. Are you happy with how the season has gone so far, and are you encouraged by what could possibly happen going into January, February, March before the last leg running?
I mean, as I watched this game, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, there's so many encouraging signs here. In midfield, you see Gomez. I think overall, what can possibly happen? I know like Gravenberch and stuff was extremely poor today, but knowing what we're missing squad-wise, you're missing your starting left back, you're missing Mac right now, which I thought was like a key part of this midfield moving forward. So overall, I am happy. And I'm never freaking happy. So I am happy as can be. Let's go with that one. I think it's based on what we expected. I'm happy. At the same time, a little bummed, because I feel like some of the points we lost could have been very easily avoided, especially losing points at home kind of hurts.
I think the majority of Liverpool fans will probably agree. I think we're in fine fettle, as I said earlier. We have, if we get past January and we have all of our players back fit, we have the squad to compete for the rest of the season in all the competitions that we're still in. What we would hope for, I would think, is just maybe more return from Núñez, less injuries to any player whatsoever in general. That's why if you look at our physio bench now, like it's increased to 20 physios. It looks like there's all sorts of people. It used to be just Ruben Bennett back in the old days, and then Mark Leather for a long time, and then Dr. Peter, what's his face? But now there's like a cast that's as big as a Broadway musical just for the physios. But it looks good. JD says, look, the schedule looking too far ahead, but probable no more or Endo for a trip to the Emirates beginning of February is also frustrating. But that's the joy of being a Liverpool fan. We don't get things easy. That's what makes it more valuable for when we win trophies. We don't have $1 billion zillion. We don't have the marketing arm of Manchester United. We just have each other. Which is unfortunate because two of us, Tamuj, and you don't want us in your gang.
No, you do not.
And take it over and make it worse.
Like that all-you-can-eat competition or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. We'll definitely win that one. We don't need injuries for that. So just remains to say, I think just make sure you are liking and subscribing and smashing the like button or tapping it gently if you have an old keyboard running on a Commodore 64. We have our actually, while I have you here, it's Monday morning, it's Christmas morning. I'm going to assume no morning coffee for that.
No morning coffee this Monday. We are drinking coffee. We're being reckless opening gifts probably, and we assume everybody is going to be. But the morning show will be back So we'll be back actually Wednesday morning. So no Monday night podcast as well. First time in like 2 or 3 years, I think. Like we haven't had a Monday. Obviously, it's Christmas Day. Everybody probably wants to spend it with their family, or actually, I don't know.
Veg out on the
By the end of
sofa.
the night, everybody might be trying to run away from their family, even if it is to the arms of me, Bickler, and Kelly. But yeah, we'll be back Wednesday morning with the breakfast show.
Yeah, and
Or
then
Tuesday, I guess we'll be back for the pre-match against Burnley.
yeah, and then we'll be there on Thursday. We're all crazy dudes on Thursday night when we'll be there for everybody who's regretting eating all that food and lamenting the presents they didn't get on Monday. But yes, make sure you like it and subscribe, and make sure you're in the Discord channel. There's some fantastic discussions there. Also, some crazy ones. Trophies coming easy isn't how it goes in life or sport. I think there's no better message to send out to the people for the weekend. We hope everybody has a safe one. Be careful out there. There's some mad people driving. But just, for the season that's in it, for all the love, the joy, and the holiness and everything that comes out this time of year, we'll say peace out. And here comes the Christmas 70s porn.
Oh.